Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. I wanted to give my thoughts on the Razer Kishi mobile controller and hopefully help you decide if this is for you or not. I'll be doing the controller today with my Galaxy S20 FE as it's the most powerful device I own that's currently compatible with the controller. I've been using the Kishi for about 8 months now, along with a few other controllers, and while this isn't perfect or even my favorite controller, I do find myself reaching for the Kishi more than others for a few different reasons. The controller overall is a solid device, but in one critical area, in my opinion, drops the ball to keep it from being my favorite option when gaming on my phone. The Kishi is a telescopic controller that folds into a very compact form you see here, and it does get pretty small, but I wouldn't consider it pocketable, but it will fit into a bag or backpack and take up very little space. The Kishi is made of a hard plastic that overall has a premium feel to it, similar to what you would expect from a first-party console maker. The joysticks are concave, similar to an Xbox controller, while having tension closer to PlayStation 4 joysticks. You have your typical face buttons and shoulder trigger buttons, and a D-pad. The shoulder buttons are fine, but a bit mushier than I would like, but still very serviceable. The triggers, while they do have a good amount of tension to them, are a bit springy, but overall still very serviceable. The face buttons, labeled ABXY here, are excellent and on par with what you would expect from Microsoft or Sony. The D-pad is this controller's critical downfall. It's just very mushy and just not very enjoyable to use in most situations, and overall it's just a big disappointment. And it takes away from what generally is a fantastic mobile controller. Putting the controller together itself though, it is pretty simple. You just pop out the back piece here and the controller slides right in. Obviously you would need the case off, otherwise it'd be too bulky. Overall, I'd give it a sturdiness when put together of like an A-, B+, because it's pretty sturdy. You don't feel it jiggling too much, moving around once you're in there. But moving on to some gameplay, here's me playing DuckTales. I tried to use the D-pad as much as possible here, just to demonstrate that it is usable overall. But again, it's just not fun to use because of how mushy, in my opinion, it is. So in most cases, I do opt to just use the D-pad. Even when using platformers, but I did make it a point here to use it as much as possible while playing DuckTales, which by the way just has a fantastic soundtrack in my opinion. I'll stop talking for a second just so you guys can hear it. So moving along from emulation to native Android gaming, we have a port here of Castlevania Symphony of the Night. One of my favorite games of all time. Again, I tried to use the D-pad here just as a demonstration that it is serviceable. Still not my favorite thing to use, but I do eventually very soon move over to the joystick. There it is right there, as a matter of fact. The joystick's great, man. The joysticks, they have just the right amount of tension. They're grippy. I don't find my fingers slipping off of them too often, if ever. The sticks, again, have great tension, as I mentioned, comparable to the PlayStation 4 or 5 controllers. Castlevania, another great game with another great soundtrack. I don't like the Android version of it, the port, because they did switch over the voice acting to the new one that was ported to PlayStation 5, which I just don't find to be as epic as the original one, but still pretty good. So check it out if you can. Xbox, PlayStation, even emulation are probably the best ways to play this. My goal here is to show you guys a couple of different situations where the controller is great and where it's not so great at. So I'll be moving along between different platforms to play on, streaming services and so forth. Next up, I will be showing you some Halo. Please don't judge my gameplay here because it is difficult to play the game while filming. So I promise I am bad at Halo, I'm not this bad. But yeah, the joysticks here, they work really good, even though it doesn't display here while I'm using it for gameplay. The joysticks, they're fantastic. Again, as I mentioned earlier, they have a great amount of tension that my fingers rarely, if ever, slip off of them. The face buttons also fantastic, probably the best not first party face buttons I've ever used. right up there with, I'd say, the 8-bit do, because 8-bit do also has some really, really good face buttons in my opinion. But the controller itself, it's great in these 3D type games. If you're playing Halo, if you're playing some PlayStation 1 emulation, or any native port games that require you to use the joysticks, the joysticks are great. The triggers here, they work. My biggest issue with them is just how loud they are. They're not loud enough to pick up here on the microphone as a demonstration, but if you're playing next to a significant other and they're trying to watch TV or read a book, I could definitely see how they would be a minor annoyance to them to hear the controller triggers constantly creaking, which they kind of do make a creaking noise when you're using them. But as you can see here, the controller does work with Game Pass. The home button does work as the guide button for the Xbox controller as well. So if you're going to use Game Pass a lot, the controller is definitely a good pickup for that type of situation. Here's a little bit of gameplay from Katana Zero, another side scroller. I love this game if you haven't played it. I'm using this through Steam Play from my PC to the phone. The controller does get picked up with no issues there. There's very little input lag because it is a USB-C controller. Speaking of USB-C, one of my biggest issues, another one for this controller, is while it does have pass-through for charging through the USB-C port, it's not fast charging. And in my case, I'm not sure if it's just my phone, but I do have an issue where it doesn't charge the phone fast enough to keep it from dying. So if you're charging it and you're at 10%, my phone still continues to go down just slower. So again, I'm not sure if that's just a me issue or if that's a controller issue, but pass-through is not fast charging. It's very slow. I usually take it out if I'm going to charge my phone. I don't leave it in there all day anyway, but when I'm charging, I definitely take it out of the controller because I get fast charging that way and I don't get it this way. Here's some Capcom vs SNK 2 using the Redream emulator. More D-pad usage here. Again, just not that good in my opinion. Another part of this controller that the buttons aren't that great, but it doesn't really affect you that much or too often, is the bumpers, the L1 and R1 bumpers. They're just, they're mushy, similar to the D-pad. But again, they're not as a big of a deal to me because I don't use them quite as much. I'm not going to die because of mushy bumper buttons. But again, overall, my grade for the controller, I give it a solid B-. The slow charging is a bummer for me. The D-pad is a major bummer for me. But the joysticks, the face buttons, they definitely make up for it. The triggers, they work. They're serviceable. The bumper is mushy, but not that big of a deal. The build quality on this thing is great. It feels very sturdy. I never feel like it's going to just fall apart in my hands. It feels very sturdy once it's put together. Even when it's not put together, it's a very sturdy device. The buttons overall are great. The D-pad and the bumper buttons, they're a little mushy. The controller charging the phone issue, I feel like that's a me issue, and it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal to anyone else. I just wish that sometimes I could charge it while I'm playing. It does suck sometimes I have to stop playing to either pull out another controller to charge it while you are using the controller, or to have to stop playing to charge the phone. But that's it, guys. Those are my thoughts and my take on the Razer Kishi controller. If you're on the fence about it, I definitely say go ahead and jump on it if it's on a deal. But hopefully this helps you to make a buying decision in the future. Hopefully you leave a like on the video. Hopefully you subscribe to the channel. And hopefully the Blue Bomber and I see you in the next video. Happy gaming, everyone.